iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you, and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hi, welcome to another episode of iTestify. Thank you for joining us. We have with us our guest, Dorthy Nelson, very special guest. She is a registered nurse, also a commercial and instrument-rated pilot, both by land and by sea, as well as an author of this book, Mayday, Over the Arctic. Now, there's so many stories you could share with us, but why don't we start from the beginning? How was your first flight? And the title of this book, Over the Arctic, I think it says so much.
Well, my first flight was in my dreams at 6 years of age. And I have been wanting to be a missionary ever since I was very, very small. And this is a result. Actually, I wasn't supposed to be here. This Bible would also not be here, but our Heavenly Father had other plans. And my scripture today, which I want to quote right from this very Bible that went down in the Arctic with me, is, though I land, you know, the Psalm 23 is a wonderful, wonderful text in the Bible. And it's a very beautiful one because it can cover every part of your life, not just as a shepherd, but every part. Yea, though I land on an iceberg in the Arctic, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Fear, yes, plenty of fear. But I'll tell you, God delivers. And this is what's happened in this story. He delivered my life, and He delivered a very precious Bible that was with me on the Arctic Circle. And in the Bible are the names of my grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And so I feel, I should say children. Grandchildren came later. But at any rate, this Bible has meant a lot to me. And when you ask me, read about how did it all start, when I was just 6 years of age, as you will see here on the screen, I saw a large, large globe when Daddy took me to the General Conference. I wish they had that globe now. They don't show it anymore, but it was a very wonderful place to meet. My father would say, now listen, if you get lost, Richmond, Dorothy, if you get lost, let's meet at the globe. And I loved to get lost because I wanted to meet at the globe. And there were lights all over that large globe. And one of the lights was on India. And that one on India represented my Auntie Maud and Uncle Olaf's scow. I said to myself, I've got to be a light someday on that globe. And I prayed about it. I dreamed about it. I said, I want to be a light. Well, it just so happened that a little bit later, the newspaper came along, and they decided to take a picture. And they took a picture when I was 6 years of age. This is special to me because it's the Hollywood Bowl first Youth Congress that my father was involved in. That's where we dedicated our lives to mission service. And there we are heading for Taiwan. There you'll see my father, my mother. My father was a minister. In fact, I wanted to be just like my daddy. I told him, I said, I'm going to be a minister I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a minister. He says, well, why don't you become a Bible worker? I said, no, okay, then I'm going to marry one. So I did marry a minister. And we dedicated our lives, and he is on the right there. And my two little children are there. Indian Bear. Last voyage it took is a very rough trip. Dedication of the Twin Bonanza. Besides the boat ministry, we were involved in plane ministry. There's Elder Tucker dedicating the boat. Arrival in Manila. It was a wonderful event. I had no idea this was going to happen. And the commanding general of the Air Force met my flight and all of the ladies there. And it was a wonderful experience because he gave me all free fuel. And a little bit later, I'm going to tell you about the first island that he requested me to go to. Here we are. This is Dr. Many of you will know the doctors here. These are the patients that we treated. Dr. Miller there, Dr. Roger Heald. This was Pastor Neil Wilson, as many of you will know. and my husband, who gave the health talks for his evangelistic series. They came to me and they said, Dorothy, we want something to hold the attention of these 13,000 people in the Rizal Memorial Arena, and you need to figure out something. I thought, how can I do that to hold their attention? I prayed. God gave me the vision of exhibits like at a World's Fair, and the words found in the Spirit of Prophecy Ministry of Healing, the natural nutrition, exercise, water, the natural remedies to have good health. And so I developed that program. I used to go out to the highways and byways to find somebody. Are you an artist? Are you an artist? I finally had 6 or 7 artists, and I sketched on a paper what I wanted on these exhibits, and they came back with a masterpiece, and we held the program. But I will never forget one thing, and that is, one of the pastors, they didn't know we were having a health expo with this large evangelistic meeting. And so the pastor came up to me and he said, Dorothy, I thought this was an evangelistic meeting. What is this? This looks like a 3-ring circus to me. I said, well, it's a health expo. What's that? And I said, well, come with me. I took him all around to the exhibits. He came back and he says, why haven't we been doing this sooner? Why, this is evangelism. We had a marvelous response at that meeting. These are some of the places where we held our health expos, 40 altogether in Russia, many, many other countries. This is our health expo bus. Now, this is the one by land. You saw the one by air, and you saw the one by sea, and you'll soon see what an exhibit looks like. And that's what our exhibits look like. Our family was involved. My son James, my son Ken, and Richard, they're both physicians here at Loma Linda now. They helped us in our program. And this is whom I have dedicated my life to in a way, but my ministry was because of my husband, Wilbur Nelson. He died a martyr in China. And it was hard, but Elder Finley asked me to go back and follow up his work, which I did. The Lord helped me, and we had some wonderful response there. We love the Chinese. Like Bill used to say, my husband would say, when I die, Daddy, I want to be among the Chinese people that I love so well. God granted his request. Well, this is a video now of King of the Ashantis. This is one of the programs we held in Kumasi. And if we can have some sound, please. Do we have some sound? We'll go back. Can you put the sound on?
I think
if not, I'll tell it myself. We were invited to go to appear before the King of the Ashantis. A lot of protocol, as you can imagine. And we gave the health expo to him. He got so excited, he says, you got to give it to my chieftains. They're in there. 50 chieftains are in the other room. Please go in there and do the same thing. And these are the chieftains. I felt inspired by the Lord. Give the Adventist health study to these people. I happen to have one of the panels, you might say, that shows the Adventist health study, how they live longer. And so I gave that entire study to the men. And all of a sudden, there was quietness. And a very tall tribal man stood up and he says, Mrs. Nelson, we have a request. We want to know something. First of all, we want to thank you. How do you become a Seventh-day Adventist? The doctor that was with me, I said, Dr. Osei, you stay here now. And the pastor, we have to leave for another program, but please stay here. They really are very, very interested in this whole program. I got back home after 2 weeks, and I get a call from the General Conference. I was so thrilled. I couldn't believe it. Somebody's calling me from the General Conference, and they said, do you remember Kumasi in Africa? And I said, yes. I said, we had an interesting program there. Well, he said, those African chiefs that you gave the Adventist lifestyle to have gone back to their villages, and they have all accepted the Seventh-day Adventist message.
Wow.
Wasn't that wonderful? I was thrilled. It's those kind of miracles. It's those kind of miracles that are so wonderful. I would like to tell the story.
So did they put a light on the map for you?
Well, it got too old and they put it away. And I was scolding Elder Wilson. I said, listen, I said, this inspired my whole life. I don't think you should be putting it away. Of course, he didn't have any control, I don't think, over it. But at any rate, that blow meant a lot. I'd like to tell you the first little child that we met on the island. I went out to the island at the request of the Philippine Air Force. But the church members said, don't go out there. The only good Christian on that island of Tawi Tawi is one hanging from a tree. You just can't do it. I says, but I've been given free fuel for all of my flights, and that's his first request. I must do it. And so I found another friend. He was a Muslim, but he had decided to accept our message. He loved it so much. And Muslims, they make good. I was teaching in Saudi Arabia, and those girls are very earnest. I enjoyed them. At any rate, we got to the island. When we got to the island, well, they said I had to bring a gun and a security officer, and I said, no. I said, I don't want any guns, but the rest is okay. And he said, well, I got to wear my uniform. When he saw the island, when we got there, he said he changed his clothes to the civilian. He said, I know what they think of me, in the Air Force like that, as security officers. So we landed, and I said, anyone sick here? And they said, we have a little boy here. He has a large meningeal seal on his face, terribly disfigured. And the parent says, you can have him because we know he's going to die soon. And I said, oh, we'd love to have him. Take him to the other island where we have a hospital. And in the island of Cebu was Dr. Tornelia, just the perfect one. And when he saw him, he says, yes, I can work on him and make him look like a boy again. Well, he always prayed before his surgery. He prayed, and then during the surgery, his heart stopped. The little boy's heart stopped.
Oh, no.
Our first little Muslim child to get help for. Then, all of a sudden, Dr. Tornelia started to pray. He said, Lord, no one else knows this, but today is my birthday. Today is my birthday. I want nothing else but the gift of this little child. And tears were streaming down their nurses' faces. They just, oh, if only the heart will start again. And you know, the heart started again.
Wow.
He finished the surgery, and when he finished the surgery, he had to recover. After a few weeks, I flew him back to his parents. I'll never forget this. They'd never seen the boy, never seen the child, what he looked like. And as they looked inside the airplane, they couldn't wait. They got up and they looked inside the airplane and said, oh, they said, he's beautiful. Of course, this was translated for me. He's beautiful. They were so thrilled. That was the beginning of our work in that island. I call it the Forgotten Island, hidden with jewels, and the jewels are the little children. Today, I had the opportunity just a few months ago of flying to that island to give the 43rd celebration, 43rd speech for their graduation, Tawi Tawi Academy. Beautiful, beautiful. And now the airstrip is larger. There's a large campus with the students there. And it just brought tears to my eyes to be able to land there and see again that particular island that we worked so hard for. And I just thank the Lord. In the little village of Gupa, there was malignant malaria, Klebsiella pneumonia, leprosy, and it was a pitiful sight. No help had been given much at all. And so we continued with clinics there, and many of our good doctors would fly out with me and visit the island and bring medicines to help. And Johnny Tala'a, who came out and was the first little doctor in the clinic there, I'm so thankful that I was able to have a part. And that light that I saw on that globe became larger and larger. Because when I saw that light again, although the globe was gone, there was a beautiful light there. And the story of my rescue, I must tell you, this is the Bible that was in the airplane with me. And everything had gone well.
So from the time you started flying, the first mission trip, you were literally on as a pilot, how long after did this story take place where you actually went over the Arctic?
Well,
how many years?
The first airplane I flew over was a Piper Aztec, twin Piper Aztec, and this is the story that I just told. And then I realized there was a need to get to these other islands. And I thought, how are we going to do this? We need a seaplane, because if we can't land, there's no airstrip, at least we can land on the beach. And so I studied, and I got my seaplane and instructor's rating for that, and I practiced out on the Salton Sea in California there with students to put some time on the seaplane. And then shortly after that, I decided to make the flight, the transatlantic flight, because of the fuel endurance range requirement. And so that was the flight that we were taking after we had flown. We had flown hundreds of hours over there before we started, then saw the need of the seaplane. And so it was while we were flying the transatlantic route that I stopped to get special equipment in changing the oil. And that is a place where, unfortunately, the mechanic made a mistake. And so when I was flying a third of the way to the Arctic, to Greenland over the Arctic, I began to notice that my oil temperature gauge, I began to notice there was something serious going on. And that was true, because a minute and a half later, the engine stopped. And then with the load that we had and all, we were going down 1,000 feet per minute. I was at 8,000 feet, so that gave me 8 minutes to find a landing place. And if you're interested in reading something exciting, don't lose any sleep over it, but it's interesting reading, because it tells about how I jumped out of a window first. My brother said, "Dottie, I'm going to give you a first flying lesson. Come on now." And he gave me Daddy's big umbrella, and he put Mother's best pillows down below, and I was on the second floor of our house. And he says, "Now when I say cleared for takeoff, that means jump," which I did. I wanted this to be the best first flight I could take. And for a while, I was flying. But all of a sudden, I came down with a very, no broken bones. But my father came back to my brother, and he said, "Follow me to the bathroom. I want to show you how things fly. It's not an umbrella, it's an airplane." Well, at any rate, then I learned to jump off of beaches. You know how kids are. They just want to learn right away. And so I actually started to learn by going out to the airport and telling the instructor that I didn't want my daughter to be a pilot's widow. My son-in-law was starting flying lessons out at Collegedale, Tennessee. I said, no, I know what happens, and that she could be a widow someday. Well, then he looked at me and he says, "Well, get in this airplane and I'll show you what happens when you lose an engine." Because he said, "I know you're worried about what happens when you lose an engine in the air." And he showed me. I thought, well, that wasn't bad at all. That's not like an umbrella in a situation, you know. And so he said, I said, "Do you think you could teach me to fly?" He said, "Yes." So he did.
How old were you at the time?
Well, I shouldn't tell you. I was about 42.
That's when you started flying, 42.
Right.
So you were a nurse before that.
Well, I had a baby at 42. Why not fly? You know,
wow.
Little Jamie was born at age 42. But at any rate, no, I had this dream in my heart. We'd been out to the mission field. We'd been to the Philippines and all, but we didn't have any way to get to these other islands and all. And that's when I thought, my dream can come true. And God gave me the dream. He really did, because it's meant my whole life, missionary work. And
so you were actually, getting back to this story, you were actually prepped on your first flight on how to...
It was a controlled landing.
A controlled landing.
Right.
So
not
what
a crash,
happened?
a controlled landing in which you at least could see where you're going to set down.
Okay.
Now, you can't do a go-around. You have no engine, and you're going down 1,000 feet per minute.
So that was you on the Arctic.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then what happened?
If you really love to hear the story, go to the store, and I'm going to leave one here for you. I'm going to leave a Mayday book for you. But at any rate, you'll enjoy it, because the last half of the book tells about all of the experiences, miracle experiences that we had in our flying. And I know why I never flew 1 hour for pleasure, never. It was only for the Lord. And we did a lot of interesting programs in which God answered our prayers so many times. And I appreciate you asking that question, but you know, when I think of being 42 and learning to fly, I didn't know if it would work or not, but it did. And he said I became a very good pilot. And I thought, in order to fly in the mission field for the Lord, I've got to get all the ratings that I can. And that's why I went through private, commercial, instrument, double I, flight instructor, seaplane. I wanted everything I could get, so that if I did have something happened, I would know what to do. And so I thank the Lord for that. And, you know,
So you've been flying since you were 42, so that's about 20 years now you've been flying.
well, I'm 90 years of age, and you don't fly after a certain period of time. But I flew as long as I could. I flew the Piper Aztec. I flew the Lake Amphibian, and then a replacement for the Lake Amphibian was donated by the Quiet Hour, which I appreciated immensely. It was a twin Bonanza. Somebody up in Oregon, Jack Lang, I believe his name was wanting to sell it. They offered it to Andrews and a few other places, but it's not a common airplane. But when I heard from Laverne, when he called me and said, would you like to have a twin Bonanza, I didn't care what it was. Any plane, that's wonderful, because we need more aircraft.
Was it a V-tail?
Actually, the straight tail is what made it so stable from other aircraft. It was so stable. I was in turbulence when other aircraft would be reporting moderate to severe, you know. And so it was a wonderful airplane. And we used that after dedication, like you saw there with Tucker. We used it many years, but then we were called back for other missionary work. Of course, China was in our hearts. And so China was something that was very special to us. And so we began devoting much more time to China. I know that my husband probably has been in and out of China maybe 100 times. Wow. He just lived there, and it was marvelous. My family have all pitched in. They've all taken Daddy's place to work for him. I'm so thrilled that my children have all been in Health Expo evangelism. They've been wonderful support to me when I lost my best friend. But my best friend is still there, and he is the one that's helping us and helping me especially to get through these last days that I believe we're here on earth. I really do. One of these days, I like to end up in a book when I'm giving it to somebody. Let's fly together. Let's fly together to that earth made new. And I believe that it's very soon now. I believe that flying to me is eventually someday going to be flying with my family and friends up to our glorious, glorious home. And I can hardly wait. I can hardly wait.
So, title of the book is Over the Arctic, but we haven't really gotten to that part yet. We have time to share that, you think?
Well, I'll tell very quickly. Down in the Arctic, I was on 12 inches of ice and 82 degrees below zero weather. And the interesting story, and I'll tell it very quickly, when we were in Sears, I was trying to buy a tent just for survival gear. And as we were looking at things, the stewardess says, not the stewardess, she was a clerk in the store. She said, well, she said, why don't you get this red jacket? And Bill said, yes, get a red jacket. They'll see you better when you go down in the Arctic. Those were his very words. Can you imagine?
It's like break a leg.
Right, right. And anyway, we did get the red jacket, and when you see it in the book, you'll see me in the helicopter with the helicopter was a miracle. I'll tell you why. They were going to try to rescue us. I had a mechanic pilot friend with me. They were going to try to rescue us, and the helicopter that was trying to rescue us developed icing, could not get to us, and he finally says, how long can you survive? I said, well, as long as the good Lord sees fit. And that was the end. And there we were. I had to move fingers and toes all night to avoid frostbite. I would open up to get a deep breath of air, but it was like ice in your lungs. But then you shut it up, and then it's like suffocation. And we were on a moving ice floe. And they say that the polar bears can actually smell the scent 30 miles away, and they'll jump from ice floe to ice floe. Like I said, we were on a moving ice floe. I wanted to get back in the airplane when I remembered the polar bears. They said, don't get back in the airplane. You'll suffocate in there. You'll close it, and you'll actually suffocate in the airplane. And so, but the miracle of the whole story was, there was a break in the weather. The helicopter got through, picked us up, and took us to Sanderstrom, where we were able to very, very quickly get into an airplane that was going back to the States. He just welcomed us with open arms. He said, come into my plane, I'll take you back. It was a Saberliner, and we were able to get help. But there are many other stories that you really have to read to understand, because it all fits together in God's pattern. I've been a witness since this accident. I call it an accident with a purpose, because this accident, I have told it, they flew me back to New York, Century Sports Incorporated. They said, we want to have an interview with, which they did. We're going to buy you an airplane. We want you to go to all the universities and give your story. But I had an appointment to go back to the Philippines. I says, I'm sorry, I just can't do this. But at any rate, their attorney came back 2 weeks later and said, please, you're going to make a lot of money. You go give money later. Just please take this, get the airplane and go to these universities. I says, well, I would like to, but I really can't. I promised in the Philippines that I would be back. And that's the year, that's the time I developed the Health Expo program. And so I know God had his purpose in that. And so I just want to thank him for all that he's done. This accident has brought me in touch with so many places I wouldn't be speaking to, Rotary clubs, presidents. I just, like I say, I remember in the airplane one time, the captain of the airplane came back, knelt down by me, said, I've come to honor you. He's the chief captain of the flight. And he said, come to honor you. And he says, what's the name of your book? I've heard about it from one of the stewardesses. And I told him, he says, well, I took flying so I could be a missionary pilot. And he says, now I want to honor you because you're doing what I can't do. And so many, many opportunities like that. And I've been very, very thankful. And thankful to you to come here and to share my, it's nothing I did. Christ was in the cockpit at all times, no matter where I was. I thank him.
So Dorothy, so after your crash, you didn't stop flying. You continued to fly after that.
I came back to the States, and the Quiet Hour gave me the Twin Bonanza. And we flew the Twin Bonanza everywhere. We even flew it up to Hong Kong, Singapore, and different places. My family are very much involved in Health Expo evangelism, although my two sons are physicians now here. We do take time. My son Richard has just returned from holding a Health Expo with his wife Anna, and my son Ken has been with us. Even my younger son James has been with us on our programs. I'm glad God gave me this kind of a family that are all involved in Health Expo evangelism.
Oh, Dorothy, that really is a blessing. And we thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. And I think it's amazing that what you've shown us is that life actually doesn't end at 40, it just begins. It's wonderful to hear all that. And it certainly has put us in mind to read your book, Mayday Over the Arctic. So we thank you for giving us a copy of that.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. And remember, 5 minutes can bring you 3 souls. I want the young people to hear this, because it was 5 minutes that my husband had with this young Philip that his mother and his sister all accepted the message. And that, to me, is the most thrilling part of evangelism.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for being on here, and thank you for watching. And we hope that you will continue to pray for us here on iTestify.